This lesson we're going to concentrate on a single figure. I don't know about you, but I like to take sneaky pictures of people when I'm out and about, and the subject we're going to do, this chap really caught my eye, and I thought that you might enjoy painting him as well. He's walking about in the countryside with his hat and his stick on, and I thought he made a nice interesting figure. Now, I really want to go through the drawing with you on this one because it is important, and in previous lessons I've shown you how to do the box method, where we put a box around the figure and we look at the negative spaces. So keep that in mind, because we actually are going to work on a similar level where we're looking at the spaces around the figure and in between the figure to get an accurate representation. So let's get started. I'll just go through my materials. I'm using my reservoir brush, size 14, a size 8, my palette, and we'll use about 3 or 4 colours, and I'll go through them as we go along. Now, I've blown this drawing up to scale, so we're going to draw it to scale. It was quite a small one, made it a little bit bigger, make it a little bit more interesting. So let's make a start. Okay, so we'll put the top of the hat in first. Nice oval shape going on there, isn't there? Okay, now this is where we start to ask ourselves questions. So the brim of the hat is coming at an angle like this one, isn't it? It comes round something like that. Now, where's his face? If I put my pencil and make a mark here, it's actually kind of coming at around this shape. We don't see much of the face, but it is important that we get that in. The shape of his collar, and actually that really does kind of come round underneath the hat shape. And again, the collar ends, if I draw a line here on the hat, it's round about in exactly the same place, about here. You've got to constantly ask yourself questions and measure different elements of the picture. Okay. So now we've got that in, let's work our way down the arm here. So we've got the shoulder shape, and then the arm comes out here. So let's draw the line again, or even lay our pencil on that. If I put a line on the picture here to say where the shirt ends, I'm looking at this gap here. So I can clearly see that it comes out to about this point. Again, don't draw lots of detail at this stage. You might need to remove some marks and tidy up a little bit. So it's probably best to keep it simple for now. Okay, we'll put a few lines of the shirt in and line it across here. There's the arm. So I'm pretty confident that that's in the right place. Again, let's look at where the hand ends. So again, we're looking at this shape here in between. If I draw a line, that might be easy to actually imagine. Well, there's the line here. So the arm comes out probably down to about that point. If it's not right, we can always lose it or change it. Shoulder. Again, put your pencil on that line. It's on a lovely angle, isn't it? Coming down something like that. The arm at the side here on the right comes out. So if I make a mark where the elbow is and I draw a line across, I'm asking myself a question again. Whereabouts is that in relationship to that? So it's round about that point, isn't it? So I can kind of put the shirt shape in. There we go. Okay, let's come back across again. And the shirt appears again, and it's this shape here. Can you see it? This little shape in between the shirt and the hand that we're looking at. So it kind of comes, oh, that's probably a little bit too wide. Something like that. And this really is virtually a straight line with a few kind of wobbles to it. Let's think about the feet. Okay, so I'll put my pencil on that line again, and if I draw a line up like that, it's roughly, in fact we'll draw it right the way up, so actually it's on level with the head, isn't it? So if I draw an imaginary line that comes down like this, I know that I'm pretty accurate, or almost. We don't see the other leg, of course. We see a little bit of it. Okay, so the gap between the edge of the trousers or the shorts, the foot kind of comes out to meet that, doesn't it? So we're roughly talking around that shape. So I'm just drawing a line for now, and then I'm confident that I know that's in the right place. And there's the other foot. We see a little bit of it here. So let's have a look at our drawing so far, and let's just check our measurements. It's always best to check. So I've got the collar, the shoulder. I'm going to come in a little bit with that mark. I don't think it was quite right. And then let's put the stick in as well while we're here. And that's interesting because, again, it's this shape that we're looking at, this shape here, that's going to help us to evaluate where that stick goes. It's round about that shape, isn't it? I like the crease on the shirt. I'll draw that line in with my pencil to remind me that I like it and I want to include it in my picture. Some nice shadows going on as well, so we'll draw those in. Just strengthen the lines. I'm more confident now that I know they're correct. Let's continue with this shape down the arm. It's got a little watch on there. We might want to pop that in. Again, you know, we're not painting a portrait, so you know, I'm not putting any facial features in, and I'll just make a very kind of loose representation of the hand shape. So colour-wise, we're going to keep it nice and simple, and let's put the flesh tones in first. So for that, I'm going to use some yellow ochre or some raw sienna and a touch of the cadmium red. Ooh, that was far too much. And just a little bit less. We don't want him to look too orange or too red. That's kind of a nice flesh tone. I'll drop some reds into it when it's still wet, but let's just put this weaker wash in first. Now there's that nice flesh tone. Let's find it again here. And we may as well put the legs in as well while we're putting the flesh tones in. So I'm just blocking in with my brush. No detail, just straightforward washes. Now, while that's still wet, let's take some of the stronger red and just put little bits in there. So I'd like a little bit here, perhaps a little bit. I'm looking at the darker areas really, so that's where I'm popping them in. We'll drop a little bit in here as well, maybe down the back of the leg. And we're just letting that bleed so it's nice and wet into wet. Let's start with his hat. Again, we'll keep it simple. I'll go back to the ochre again, the yellow ochre. And now we're trying to think about light as well. So obviously we know that the light is coming from the left-hand side. So we're thinking about how that affects the hat. And I can clearly see that on the right-hand side of the hat, it's darker. But what we'll do is we'll do that with our shadow work. So for now, we'll just put a very kind of simple wash of the yellow into that shape, like so. Now let's be brave. I know these washes in the flesh tones are wet, but we're going to put the shirt area in, and it's a nice kind of cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, so up to you. I'm going to use the cobalt blue. And what you must remember is we're just putting flat washes in for now, but we are thinking a little bit about light. So let me show you what I mean. So for instance, I know that the light's coming from the left. So what I'm doing is I'm just blocking in these colours for now. And as I come across, I'll add more water because I want these areas to be slightly lighter in value. And you see what's happening? So I've got the dark wash and the lighter wash, and we'll bring that wash down. A little bit more paint, and then we'll soften it with lots of water because we know that's the lighter side. We're going to use shadow work later on to really pull that together, but for now that's perfect. What about his shorts? We'll choose a different colour. Perhaps the Prussian blue might be quite nice. Again, it's your picture, so you know you can choose any colours you like. We're playing a dangerous game because this wash is very wet, but we're going to allow it to run together. So here we go, a little bit of the Prussian in there, and what's going to happen is it's going to catch a little bit on this wash. Live dangerously, that's what I say. And again, I'll do the same thing. I'll pull that wash across, but then I'll clean my brush, take the excess off, and just soften it down so it appears slightly darker. Let's put his sandals in as well now. So a little bit of the burnt sienna, that'd be nice. I like painting studies like this because it's quite a character to paint, but also as well as kind of gaining experience from painting figures, this chap might appear in a future painting, and hopefully he might appear in one of yours. I'd like to see that. Add a little bit of life and character to your picture. Just bobbing in these very simple marks here for the sandals, and we'll put a base on as well. And we'll put a darker mark here for a stick. Doesn't really matter what colour. We could go with a bit of brown, mix it into the blue. It's just quite a dark colour, isn't it? And we'll just draw it in. I mean, getting used to drawing with your brush is so important. And not using a ruler. It doesn't matter if your lines are a little bit wobbly. It's kind of nice and it adds a bit of character. At this stage I need to let it dry because what we're going to do is add some more value and a bit more colour, but really pull it together with some stronger shadow work. So the first washes are nice and dry. Let's start to build up the value a bit more. I have missed out this little bit of her section here, so we'll pop that in. And again, just a little bit of brown, perhaps with a little bit of the blue mixed in, just a darker brown. And we'll put that little shape in. And what that's going to do as well, is going to give us the shape of his hat. And it's only a small section, but it's quite an important section. It comes all the way around to about that point, doesn't it? There we go, so that's in. So let's start to put some value and some colour on there. What I mean by that is maybe some shadow work into the hat. So we need to mix up a shadow colour. And this is one I use all the time. And it's the ultramarine blue with a tiny bit of red. And I use this shadow colour an awful lot, whether I'm painting buildings or foliage or flesh or material. It's a lovely kind of transparent colour, and it just seems to work on everything. So it's well used to, it's great to kind of get used to mixing this nice shadow colour. Just a tiny touch of the red. I'm just going to test that. That's probably about right. So remember what we said about the light. The light's coming from the left hand side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bob a little bit of shadow work into the hat. And I can see it kind of comes across. It actually comes down into this section as well, doesn't it? Softening off into the water, taking the excess on the cloth, just softening those marks and letting them blend away. So we've got this lovely soft edge, like so. Let's continue with that shadow colour now. Now this is the scary bit, because we're going to bring the shadow across the shoulders and down into the fabric. So this is where observation plays a big part. So into the collar, and I can see the shadow comes across like so, across into this section here. And actually that's quite interesting, because the arm on the right hand side is darker, isn't it? So we can put that in with our shadow colour. And again, it's the softening off into the water, taking the excess off and just kind of pulling that shadow across and down like so. A little bit more. What about here? This nice little crease here. The shape of the shirt. Underneath the arm's quite dark as well, isn't it? And we've got a few little marks. Kind of come down something like that. And it doesn't have to be absolutely accurate. I mean, as long as you keep in mind the light's coming from the left and you're keeping the right hand side lighter, you have a fighting chance of making it look great. So there we go, that's that nice shadow coming down. Bags of water, just softening that away. I'm going to just lift that little bit away there. More shadow now. I did say at the beginning I like that triangle shape of shadow here on the shirt, on the arm. So I'll put that in. Again, into the water and soften that mark away. Now can you see what's happening? It's starting to give this kind of fabric feel, and that's what we're looking for. We still need a few more darks. There's a little bit of a dark there where the shirt is and the line of the collar. Now let's use this shadow colour again. So we're keeping to the same colour and we'll bring it down into the shorts area. So I know that the light's coming from the left, so I can keep the right hand side of his shorts fairly dark. Maybe some little lines here. Can you see how that shadow colour works now? On whatever colour I put it on, it works as a shadow. I'm going to put a little bit of shadow work into the flesh on the arms. Now this time I'm going to slightly change it. So I'm going to take some of the cadmium red and some of my shadow colour. I'm going to this time make it a little bit more red than blue. So this shadow is quite a blue colour and this one is going to be slightly more red. Whoops, too much blue. Just got to get it right. I don't want it too strong. Let's test that. Maybe a bit more blue into that. That looks about right. So I can see here that the flesh colour is slightly darker. I want to soften the line, so into the water, taking the excess off, just pulling that down. And that actually creates the curve of the shirt as well. Let's do that again on this arm here. So I can see the shadow comes around, down the arm, like so, into the water, softening off, like so. Now I'd like to do it here, but I'm a little bit concerned that that wash is a little bit wet on the shorts area, so I probably won't do that just yet. Let's just see if this is dry here. Probably dry enough. So before I do that, just a few tiny little touches into the hat. So I need a slightly darker, thicker shadow mixture. So it's the ultramarine blue again, but this time I'm going to take a little bit of brown into that. Let's have a look at that. Slightly darker, isn't it? Maybe just a little bit more. Bit of the brown, blue and the red. Oh, now that is quite dark, so a little bit of water into that. It's always worth testing it just to make sure. That's probably about right. I just want to put a few little details into the hat shape. So I like the band that comes around here. Just a few little tiny marks. Nice little dark here as well. Just soften that away. I'm going to use that same mixture to darken the hair area. And again, that's going to sharpen up the hat, make it appear much lighter. It's always tempting to put your final darks in too early, but it's best to leave them till last. So this area is probably dry enough now. Let's put the darker shadows onto the leg. And remember, we used the bit of cadmium red and the blue. So it's more on the red side than it is the blue. Just test that again. Make sure that's right. Okay, so we'll bring that shape across. Oh, a little bit dark. So add a bit of water to that. Kind of comes down something like that, doesn't it? I'll soften that mark a little bit as well. It's very strong. Back to that strong dark again. Ultramarine blue with a bit of brown. A couple of little bits now I want to put in, a few little details. I just want to put a slightly darker mark along the collar. And a slightly darker mark here in this lovely little shadow of the shirt. In fact, I'll bring that across, maybe pull it into that wet wash a little bit, like so. I'm going to put a little bit into this section, just to give that light against dark a little bit more emphasis. A little bit more dark here as well. Softening off, pulling that water into that wet wash. That dark wash will come in quite handy as well, just to darken the bottom of the shoe. Like so. I just think we need to put the shadows in now. Now we can go back to the original shadow mixture, which is the ultramarine blue and just a tiny touch of the red. Nice shadow now. So we know that it's coming from the base of the foot here. Don't worry about it being too accurate. And something like that, isn't it? Nice wibbly wobbly lines, using the base of the brush perhaps to pull that out. And what that's doing is it's really anchoring him to the ground. I might put a little bit down the stick as well. Just darken that a little bit. Maybe just a touch of shadow into the leg. And I think our little figure walking in the landscape is done. I really hope you're going to have a go at that. I mean, you've probably got lots of photographs yourself with figures in, and it's worth practicing. Obviously it's not a finished painting, but it's a lot of fun to do, and it's really important as well for your development to kind of get used to painting flesh and fabric. And I think he'd look great in any landscape, whether it be an urban one or a country landscape. And have a go, enjoy. Thanks for watching.